we are never going to have any industry, I really believe this, that is a perfect approximation of the cosmetic diversity in this country. We want the best, period. That's what America is. That's what the meritocracy represents. So all this cosmetic diversity BS, Blake Masters is right about it. Like, we want people who do the job fabulously well, such that what they look like doesn't matter at all.
Our friend Blake Masters is in a tight race for the Senate seat out in Arizona, critical Senate contest out there against Mark Kelly, who Clay rightly points out, when's the last time you heard a really great idea or heard anything from anything at all?
Has this dude ever said
Kelly.
anything?
I can't even think of what his voice sounds like. I know he was an astronaut. That's all I know.
That's pretty much his entire political campaign. I used to be an astronaut.
Yeah, it seems Fetterman's campaign in Pennsylvania is I wear baggy sweatshirts, and Kelly's campaign in Arizona is I was an astronaut. That's pretty much it, it seems like.
Fetterman wears hoodies and shorts pretty much all year round and says that he's a Bernie acolyte. Yeah. And our astronaut friend in Arizona doesn't even care about the border.
I hope that all the people who work for a living in Pennsylvania have to show up for a job that they must do to pay their bills. I would find it condescending for a politician to be like, yeah, I wear like big slumpy sweatshirts and shorts because I'm just like you, when his parents and his family's paying all of his bills. He's basically like what?
No, I was just going to say, this is such a big point to me, Buck. If you have a family and you're in your 30s and your 40s and you are healthy and your family, your parents are paying for your family. I'm not talking about somebody who's got a health condition or something bad. This guy is up to that point totally healthy, unable to provide for his own family in his 30s and 40s. So his mom and dad have to care for his family. You shouldn't even be able to consider yourself to be a decent human being if that occurs, much less a United States senator.
I'm just saying, Fetterman has never had a job, like a job in the normal economy, but he's showing up at all these places like, hey, I wear like a big baggy sweatshirt and my shorts and I just look like I don't care because, I'm just like you who like do the things to make the money to live. It's like, no, dude, this is it's a little bit like when some politicians all of a sudden they start wearing like Carhartt jackets they've never worn before. Like, yeah, I'm just like a working class guy.
Or you have the different accent depending on what part of the country
it's like,
you
don't
campaign
do that.
in.
People work hard, show respect. Don't do this. Oh, yeah, look at me with my Carhartt work gloves on as a politician who's never actually done one of these jobs. Anyway, but going back to Masters, but it is an important rule of thumb. And anytime a politician has a brand new Carhartt outfit when they're on the campaign trail, you should think twice about who this person really is and what they're doing. If they've had it for 10 years, great. If they're the real deal. But if all of a sudden, it's like the ones who they're like, yeah, I love to go hunting. And it's like, do you know which side the bullets actually come out of? I'm wondering. But so Blake Masters run against Kelly. And here's what ended up happening. He got into a scuffle on Twitter, a kerfuffle on Twitter because of this. He tweeted something about the AP, the Associated Press, wrote this report about how great it is that there's more diversity at the Federal Reserve than ever before. Okay. So Masters tweeted about this. Finally, a compelling explanation for why our economy is doing so well. More female, black, and gay officials, I'm quoting here, contributing to the central bank's interest rate decisions than at any time in its 109-year history, end quote. Now, of course, there was all this backlash to this, and here is Blake. He made a video about this. Here is what he says in the video.
Well, this tweet made people mad. Newsweek wrote, oh, Blake said that women and minorities are hurting the economy. Fake news. Look, I don't care if every single employee at the Fed is a black lesbian, as long as they're hired for their competence and not because of what they look like or who they sleep with. News for Joe Biden. We are done with this affirmative action regime. I can't think of a single policy since the end of Jim Crow that's been worse or more divisive for race relations in this country. Race quotas are wrong. Gender quotas are wrong. They're unjust. They're illegal. But the Democrats are addicted to this kind of identity politics garbage. They just care about how you look, not whether you're the best qualified or whether you can do the best job.
Everything he's saying there is true, that this is wrong. It is unethical to make decisions about somebody based on skin color, hiring, letting them into a school, whatever the case may be. The Supreme Court is taking this up in just a few months. They'll hear the arguments. Republicans have got to lean in on this stuff. I mean, the racial entitlement regime needs people to go at it all in and make the case.
Buck, every time that you need something really important done in your life, do you care about anything other than excellence? And let me give you an example. If you suddenly, or a member of your family, needed to have life-saving surgery for some sort of illness, would you care anything about your doctor other than whether he or she was the absolute best at their craft? The answer, of course, no matter who we're listening to right now, is you want the best. When you get in an airplane, do you feel better if the pilot is cosmetically diverse, or do you feel better if the pilot says, yeah, I spent 30 years in the military as one of their top aviators, and then I decided to come over into commercial air aviation? I'm going to be like, hey, you know what? I feel pretty confident about the guy or the girl who is flying my plane. I want the absolute best, period. Yeah, that's what America represents, the meritocracy.
To your plane example, any American right now gets on a plane, and let's say they go and they speak to the pilot for a second. Sometimes the door will be open. Let's see they see a Native American pilot who's sitting there. He says, he explains he's Native American. He says, I'm a Native American pilot, and I also flew in the Top Gun program for the United States Navy for 15 years. You're like, awesome, sweet.
Yes.
Let's say you walk into another plane. You see a guy there named Bob. Bob's a white guy. And you're like, Bob, how do you get this job? And he's like, he's like, my dad's a high-level executive at the airline.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want the...
I'm not that excited
We all
about
understand
Bob.
what merit actually means here. We want the first pilot, right? It's but the problem that you run up against here is that people want a system. They want a system whereby you can change what merit is and how it is gauged and affect the outcome and demand that everyone pretend there's no effect on merit in the outcome. It doesn't work.
Let me give you an easy example from the world of sports, Buck. Every member of the U.S. men's basketball team, the national team that played at the Olympics, is black. Every single one. There's only 12 or 13% of the American population that is black. If we had a perfectly representative United States basketball team, we would take away the all-black team and replace it with white, Hispanic, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, and black players, right, to perfectly approximate America. The reality is every single profession in the world is not going to perfectly represent what the population at large is, because talent is distributed differently in meritocracies. Some groups, I'll give you another example. Look at the spelling bee. Almost every spelling champion for the last 40 years, as long as the spelling bee has been going on, is Asian. A huge number are Indian. Is that because the spelling bee is biased against Indian spellers, or is it because, for whatever reason, that talent, that group of people has decided to focus on the spelling bee, right? Certainly, the English language is not biased in front of in recent immigrants, which are overwhelmingly the people who win spelling bees. No, we are never going to have any industry, I really believe this, that is a perfect approximation of the cosmetic diversity in this country. We want the best, period. That's what America is. That's what the meritocracy represents. So all this cosmetic diversity BS, Blake Masters is right about it. Like, we want people who do the job fabulously well, such that what they look like doesn't matter at all.
And it's also so unfair and undermining to anybody who's in a protected minority category, who is, we think about somebody like Dr. Ben Carson, for example, is a world-class surgeon in his field, right? I forget
Yep.
what the procedure was, but he's a world-class surgeon in his field. When there are people who are in, say, the field of medicine who are minorities, there are going to be people they come across who say, well, I know that we change standards, so they will make improper assumptions about the ability of individuals like a Dr. Ben Carson based upon the changing of the meritocracy, the changing of the system to bring about this outcome that the left thinks is more equitable, which is unfair to people who have all the skills, have all the ability, and didn't benefit from it, right? That's the other part of this that I think often gets overlooked.
It's what Joe Biden did to his own Supreme Court Justice nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson. If Joe Biden had said, I'm going to pick who I think is the best candidate to replace Justice Breyer, then people, and then he gives you a list like Trump did of 20 different names, and he picks Ketanji Brown Jackson. I think a lot of people would have responded differently to her selection than saying, I guarantee to you that I'm going to pick a black woman, which automatically eliminates 94% of all the people in the country who are not black women, and then you pick a black woman. Well, how do you argue that you pick the best man or woman when you said on the precept as part of the precondition, I'm only going to pick a black woman? You have undercut your own nominee's legitimacy based on your identity politics. I think Joe Biden did a disservice to Ketanji Brown Jackson in that respect.
We were just talking about Fetterman, the would-be senator from Pennsylvania, and how he is not a good choice, folks. That's very clear. But here he is back in so this was, I believe, Clay, is this right? Before the stroke that happened. He's had a stroke.
Yeah, this is in December of 21, I believe,
so this was
where this clip is
then.
from.
He says that he is against voter ID, and I want you all to hear why.
In my own state, they are going to attempt to pass a constitutional amendment, making sure that universal voting ID for every time you vote, not just when you sign up to vote, but every time you vote, because they understand that at any given time, there's tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians who typically are on the poorer side and are people of color that are less likely to have their ID at any one given time.
First, I mean, there's a couple of parts of this. On the one hand, notice Democrats always oppose voter ID. The Supreme Court looked at voter ID years ago as a case in Indiana, I believe. A voter ID is, when universally applied, fine. It's necessary for election integrity. It is not racist. But they oppose it wherever they can at the state level under the it's racist mantra. And to that, I just want to say, someone should ask Fetterman, ID is something you can get for free. You can give it to people for free in states. Why does he assume that people of color, as he says, don't have ID?
Yeah, it's a racist assumption. It's also an assumption that is overwhelmingly rejected by white, black, Asian, and Hispanic people. Hopefully everybody listening to us right now is going to go vote. It's not that big of a deal to show your ID to prove that you are who you say you are to be able to vote. I mean, this is crazy. Like, I can't go to a sporting event and go to will call and pick up tickets without a photo ID, right? Like, there are photo ID required for things that are not very important at all. So this is, again, part and parcel. Make no mistake about it. Fetterman said that he agrees with Bernie Sanders on everything. Would Pennsylvania elect Bernie Sanders to be their United States Senator? If they would, you should vote for Fetterman. If you're out there right now saying, man, that would be crazy if Pennsylvania elected the senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, that's the choice you have. Dr. Oz is not a perfect candidate. There is no such thing as a perfect candidate. But he ain't Fetterman. And that is a big win. Pennsylvania, you got to do what's right here and get on behind Dr. Oz.